Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of this podcast series. Today, I am thrilled to have a great friend of mine, Mercy Manning, here, who is just an absolute connector and great person in this industry. So, Mercy, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody, and then we'll yak.
All right. Thanks, Carrie, for having me. It's so good to be here. I'm the VP of Sales and Sustainability Strategy for Aligned, which is a data center provider in the industry, one that I am really passionate about. My background, a little bit about me. I'm born in San Francisco, started my career in actually tech investment banking. Thought I'd go into the inside and figure out how all of these things are funded. And then from there, quickly went on to the startup side and started my career there, worked in kind of all different types of technology, early mobility, wireless technologies, and eventually found my way to basically energy efficiency technology through my own personal passion around sustainability. And so I was like, how could I bridge my career in technology with, basically helping the planet? And so that led me to energy efficiency technology, where I was able to help commercialize two different technologies that were specifically for the built environment, one for more commercial assets, government buildings, office buildings, campuses. And then the second one, which is actually what led me into data centers, was a technology specifically for mission critical and data center environments to optimize the energy use across, all of our clients' portfolios. So that's really, how I got into data centers, is just this focus on how can I use technology to optimize our energy and carbon footprint in doing what we already are doing, but doing it better. And so after working on the technology side, actually, within the company's building and innovating on the technology, I flipped over to the client side, or at the time, which was my clients, which were data centers. So yeah, that's kind of how I got here. The founders of Aligned, I had been going around working on colos, trying to improve their energy profiles. And, after 4 or 5 years of doing that, I came across Aligned. They had an advisor when they were few years into starting the company, that was a leader in the sustainability world and knew me from my work in that world, and connected the dots, brought me into Aligned, introduced me to the founders, and said, you got to hire this woman if you want to grow this business. She's passionate. She knows the technology, and she knows the colo business. So he made that connection, and I will be forever thankful. And when I was presented with this opportunity and learned about what Align was doing, it was like this aha moment. Like, finally, I don't have to fix all these things that weren't built right to begin with, to go to a provider like Align, where every decision from the get-go was about how can we do this the most efficiently without risking any reliability. Like, in every decision that they made and how they were designing their technology, how they were designing their buildings, it just was so well thought through and holistic in the approach. And I got really excited. I just remembered so clearly, so many people were first kind of seeing what we were really doing. They're like, wait a minute, you actually do that? That's just not in marketing. Like, you actually can deliver that efficiency. And, we'd show them, and they're like, you're actually willing to be transparent? Like, that's part of your ethos. That's part of the product. Like, we don't have to ask for these reports. We don't have to bug people to get the information. It's just, it was really cool to see the light going off for customers that are like, this is what we've been asking for. And it's been fun. I'm still excited 5 years later.
That's always a good thing. Yeah. Sustainability is a huge, huge portion of everything in this industry, from the edge data centers all the way to the great big data centers. And it's only going to get worse with 5G antennas popping up all over the place and this need for compute everywhere. It's just getting worse. And so there's a difference between the facilities that were built maybe 10 years ago. There was kind of a single way of doing it. Everybody did it the same way. They didn't really worry about power as much because they passed that cost on to the tenants of the building. And then the tenants came around and said, well, wait a minute, we want to be sustainable too. And so I think that shift has been something that's really big in this industry. And like you said, your end users are demanding that now.
Yeah, no. And I think I had I totally agree. And I think I had a pretty interesting vantage point, because prior to Align, that the technology I mentioned that I was working with, we were brought in to basically as an overlay to the control system, using AI and machine learning to essentially provide control based on the real time cooling environment and airflow environments in the data hall. And so the folks that were bringing us in, yes, they were the colo providers, but they also were customers, the large users, because they were trying to get a handle on how can we make this better? How can we make this more efficient? And so because of those conversations, I was given access to the energy teams at some of the largest, all the big names that we all use daily, right? I was working with those energy teams, and the energy teams were kind of, there was two sides of that. There was the energy efficiency side, and then there was the renewable energy side. And so I was just by, the folks that I was working with, the conversations that I was in, I was hearing about their focus on energy efficiency. But that was also part of this program. Like, if they're going to go out and buy renewable energy, they wanted to make sure what they had, that what they were spending was optimized before they went in and did their big renewable energy spend. So having that kind of perspective on this is part of a larger plan of where these folks are going, these large customers and cloud providers are going, that was actually really helpful when I joined Align, because I came to Align for the energy efficiency. I saw this was something that they were asking their colo providers for, and they weren't getting. They weren't either getting the data or they weren't getting the results they were looking for. But then I also saw that the next thing that they wanted to ask for or would be asking for, we're trying to figure out how to ask for, was better energy, cleaner energy, green energy, renewable, right? Having a partner on that. And that was, I'm going back now 6-7 years from back in time here.
A minute or two, yeah.
A minute or two, right? But these were like the conversations I was getting pulled into, which was, it was awesome. So when I got to Align, that was one of the first things I said. And like, guys, I'm here because of the technology you guys have built. I'm here because of the commitment to, efficiency, and both on the energy and the water side. But I'm telling you, this is the next thing that's going to be asked of our industry. And we need to be ready because, they might not have asked yet, but it's coming. And sure enough, a year later, first big RFP that I was a part of, that was one of the main requirements. And, obviously that was a little like, yay, I got it right. But, really it was a good sign that, hey, this is getting out of the marketing department and moving into the site selection needs assessment, right? And real evaluation of like, this is how they're going to choose which market they go to. This is going to be part of which provider they go to and who's willing to partner with them and come up with a solution, because it's all going back to their employees and their customers are asking this of them.
And there's definitely been a journey. When I started in this industry and I was running data centers, we didn't care. It was like a necessary evil. It didn't really matter what it drew. And then we started worrying about it because it was a cost thing, right? Just the cost of the energy. And ASHRAE got involved and we figured out there's better room arrangements. And it's just been this kind of progress. But then somehow, we split off because budgets split off, right? The facilities budget was different than the IT budget. And heaven forbid the two should talk to each other, which has been a big problem in this industry anyway. And then when you throw in the colo market, there's no reason to talk to facilities because that was somebody else's bother. And so I think that it's really refreshing that there are colos that now really are building those kind of bespoke, what the end users want, data centers with an eye to sustainability. But let's talk about this because I know you love sustainability and all, and we've had these conversations before, but let's talk about renewable energy. And I think another misnomer in this industry, people buy carbon credits, but that doesn't mean they're using carbon neutral power, right?
Right.
There's a big difference because you can't trace your electrons. You don't know if it actually came off the windmill that day or if it came off the power grid that day unless you build it yourself. So we're seeing like microgrids and some other things coming along, but I think it's really interesting to see where it's going to go before it's all said and done.
Yeah. And I totally agree. And there's also this, I've had conversations with folks who are like, well, why aren't you building, right adjacent to a wind farm or a solar farm? And I say, well, we haven't done it yet. It's not to say we won't. And, given at least for for Aligned, it's probably an easier conversation given our parent company owns, a majority of the renewable energy assets, or a large percentage,
right.
right? I mean, that's a big part of their business. So I think, there are those creative discussions that we can have, and we've started to. And then it's just really how do we make sure we get the network to those locations, right? And so some of these assets, these renewable assets, are in basically the middle of nowhere. So I think for a few of the,
it's a good place for them, though.
A good place for them, yeah. I mean, and if you're one of the big five, right, you can go build your campus there, and they do. But I think that is an opportunity for colos to down the road, if that becomes, to get that behind the meter relationship with the renewable, that is a possibility. Right now, we're still being asked to build in certain markets where everybody wants to be, and those are usually somewhat, they're not in the middle of nowhere, I guess. I'd
kind of
say
a fixed, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
Right. They come with the the power utility relationships that are there. So, but we are at least having those internal discussions, and I'm a part of them. And it's all about finding the partner that, or the customer that wants us to go there and build it there, and then partnering that build with a renewable energy build with a renewable energy developer. So it's a lot of it would be some interesting partnering that would go on to make that happen. But I think it is possible. I mean, I am asked, not from people in the industry, but from outside, like, so do you have solar on your roof? And I'm like, well, we have a lot of things on our roof. It's not always, there's a few things that sometimes you'll find on our roof, right? So where we're at there, which I think is encouraging, is, as we've been building out these campuses, we've been, putting the infrastructure that's required for our core business, but always with the intention that once those buildings are kind of fully built out, or those campuses are where their end state, then we're going to go back and look at where we can infill with rooftop solar and parking lot solar and all of that. And of course, it's a drop in the bucket versus what we're actually consuming on that site, but it could probably offset, take care of our office, or do some piece. And when we get to that point, that's something I'm excited for us to do. And the fact that our team, our sustainability team, has that on as one of the bullets, and is keeping it there, that makes me happy.
So from a customer perspective, you don't have to name names. Obviously, we don't want to violate any non-disclosure agreements, but NDA. What are some of the things you're seeing customers ask for in a build?
I think that two things are happening. Like, there's more and more folks getting more sophisticated, right? Which is great in terms of their asks. And then there's also a lot of folks kind of wanting to take they're going up they're kind of graduating up the ladder here of, like, being a retail client to now a wholesale client to, maybe I want to do a custom build for, our business, still working with, a group like us. And so what I'm starting to see is some of the asks that are coming in are kind of like blending those in some weird ways. So, like, maybe what we normally would have done, where build a custom building for someone, for a 10 megawatt starting point, moving upwards. We're now starting to see those requests come in, like, at a much smaller, like, I want my own building for 2 megawatts, right? And what's interesting about that is that it's actually less efficient. It's asking for all of the bespoke things, but at such a smaller scale. So it's almost like wanting what the big guys get, but then not actually having the capacity that generally supports that build type, or that the commercials that come along with it. So I think what's just happening is that you've got people that maybe built for some of the really big guys and are now working at smaller group companies, and then coming in with the ask that they were used to when they were at whatever company. And right. So that's been trying to, what I've seen is, from the person being asked of that is, okay, how much of this can we still give you? Even though you're not talking about a 20 megawatt building, you're talking about a 4 megawatt build. I've seen a lot of that, of just the more yeah, very specific needs, but coming down to a smaller footprint. Build quickly. We can build super efficiently, deliver great energy efficiencies, water efficiencies, all of that. And some of that transfers, but if you break it up into some of these pieces where, there is just certain things that are more efficient, like, sharing, let's say, sharing the lobby or sharing some of these common areas, like there's efficiencies there. And so it's fine if you don't want those, or for whatever reason, you really need your own space. And we're always working to deliver that. But it's just interesting when, some of the needs are not as, they actually are less efficient when you break things up. So what was great is like people are looking for solutions. They need something different. They need something more efficient. And what I see next is that as we are going international, and we are already underway with that, those discoveries, that we are being brought by existing clients, right? We were being asked to go look at other regions, Latin America, Europe.
So talk a little bit about your role in the industry, because obviously when you're involved in the sales cycle, it's a very consultative sale and you have this passion that you bring with you. So what are the challenges you've had as a woman? Do people just take you seriously? Have you had to really kind of, I don't know, have you felt that need to sort of step up and overdo it?
So there's what I present out into the world, and then there's the little voice in your head, right? So I think I'm always wanting to be over prepared in terms of on the technical side, for sure. And so, but this goes back to, I've never, starting with my family business that I grew up in, I've never worked in a company where there were other women in the roles that I was working in, put it that way. So I've always only had male colleagues, whether that was investment banking. Yes, there was a few women, and I actually chose the firm that I went to because of one of the VPs. I was just so inspired by her. So that's actually how I chose that bank over, over other investment banks. But, when I was in all the technology startups, again, same thing. So what I focused on, and I've always focused on, is really understanding the technology. And I'm a systems thinker, so I'm not an engineer by training, but I am interested in understanding it, and I study it, and I ask a lot of questions. So my engineering partner, whoever that is at whatever company, we are super tight, and I dive deep, and I want to be able to say what, usually it's he, what his role in the meeting, I want to be able to say the same thing. And there's been many meetings where I had to wear both hats. So I would just say that, for me, it's being prepared and knowing the tech and knowing it, and understanding why someone, especially given that I'm on the sales side, I need to understand why people are asking the questions. I don't need to just understand my technology. I need to understand why, like the questions that they're going to ask. Why is this different than the technology they've always worked with? Why is this better? Like, how are they going to manage this with their hybrid environment or something? I need to understand the larger picture. And so at least that's what I think. And then I've done that and I've asked those questions, and that's really helped me. That's been my focus, is to just know it really well. And some of my, I guess some of the big highlights are when at the end of a meeting, they say, "So where'd you go to engineering school?" And I'm like, yay, where the guys actually thought I was one of them. And I'm,
Sure.
And that's happened to me, which, that was obviously that was a highlight for me. But then it's also, the other thing is being really comfortable asking questions and asking why. And then also telling people, hey, I don't actually know the answer to that. I'm going to get back to you. And being okay with that, not getting like embarrassed, because I think the reason so many folks have a hard time getting things done is because a lot of people don't understand what the other person needs or wants. And so if you make assumptions, you're probably going to get it wrong. So just ask the question, like ask what they, and make sure that they understood what you said. Ask them, did that make sense? Like, do I need to explain it a different way? And that's something that I think from a value perspective that I know I have added in so many meetings, because I will watch a few engineers just get into this conversation that's essentially a rabbit hole that's not going anywhere, and they're talking past each other. And oftentimes they're actually looking to, actually try to get to the same place, and maybe even saying the same thing, but it's slightly different. And so I've been able to interject in those moments and just say, let's pull it back. Like, let's come back. Let's come back and make sure we really understand what we're talking about here, or we really understand where we're trying to go.
And I think people don't realize that's really what diversity brings to the table, right? We talk a lot about diversity and inclusion and women in the industry and how, there's not enough of us. And, it's really horrible when you look at the statistics for how many more women lost their jobs through COVID than men for a lot of reasons. But I think a lot of that is really just realizing that we're all human, being able to do that pause in a conversation and add that different insight to things. It definitely helps the conversations along.
Yeah. And then in terms of what I'm actually super excited about is, on the recruiting side, because just recently we've hired 3 new women on our team, and all 3 of those women came as referrals by other women that were already out aligned. And it's just, it's just an awesome, kind of put an exclamation point on the fact that this whole topic in recruiting, we know, right, is like people refer the people they know and trust.
There's still a lot of women in this industry that feel like it's a competition with other women in this industry. And that is exactly the opposite of what it should be. Like, whether you compete with them or not, you should always have that rapport, because you never know who you're going to work with tomorrow or the next day. And I do think that it costs nothing to be decent. And as we support each other, I think, some of the other folks in the room can learn a little from that sometimes.
The real joy, no matter what business I've been in, what technology I was working on, in the end, it's, you're working to solve a problem, and you're always, at least for me, I've always worked with other people, and it's the team. It's how the magic of that team. And the one I'm specifically thinking of now, it's like, we're different people, right? We have different skill sets, and we love the fact that we have different skill sets, because then together we're super, super great. And we don't have to each be the best at everything. And I'm not in competition to be I want you to be the better person at that thing that you're an expert in. I want that, right? Just like I would hope that you want me to be able to shine in what I do best, because we're a team and we're trying to build something together. So yeah, I think what I have seen though is, there's always a few people that haven't gotten that memo yet. But for me, most of the, at least the folks that I'm working with and knowing in the industry are super collaborative, and I say all of this to know that, or say that it's a lot easier for me to coach people, which I do. And then when it comes to myself, I often imagine myself sitting on my shoulder, trying to say the same thing to me. Right. So, cause it's always easier to help somebody else than to help yourself, or to remind, have those things. So
it is.
I have relationships in the industry and outside that I go to say the same thing that I could say to somebody else to say to me. So, and lucky, I also have been really lucky, and that's probably a big part of also why I'm so happy right now, is because of the person that I work for. He's become a really good friend. He's been a great mentor, and he sees all of me and acknowledges, he's not putting me in a box, and he's appreciative of all of the parts of me. He's appreciative of my intuition versus questioning it. It's been a big shift. I haven't had that at previous companies, and it's made it actually easier for me to excel, because I don't have to justify. I mean, I still have to justify why I'm saying certain things, but it's more like he trusts me.
Yeah, I think most people don't leave jobs; they leave bosses. Mm-hmm. To be fair, mean, if somebody's going for more money somewhere else, they probably wouldn't have had that conversation to start with if they were happy where they were, or even if if that conversation came up for, organically over another reason, they wouldn't entertain that conversation if they were really happy where they are. And I think it really takes mature people to encourage their team. Like, to me, the best thing you could do is train your replacement, and for somebody to move up and have something very much like, what you're talking about, be able to have that same level of role somewhere else. And that you've had some say in them getting there and making their life better. So I think that's a good thing. But we are running up close to our time. So I will ask you, if you wanted to leave all of these young women with parting words, either about business development as a career, data centers as a career, or just in general, what would your parting words be?
Parting words, kind of twofold. It's all about looking forward. Well, maybe it's threefold. Sorry. Where is the world going? And in that, what does the world need? Right. And so aligning yourself with industries that are going to be solving not just today's problems, but the problems that you look out 10, 20 years, right? Trying to align yourself in that way. And then also align yourself with something you care about, because it's way easier to work hard when you really care. Right. And so that's kind of one side. And then the other piece is just ask for the promotion, ask to take on more responsibility, ask for more money. You have to raise your hand, and everyone's super busy. And, it's going to be either the person that's kind of reminding them that to look at me, or they're going to just go to the easy button, whatever that is, the person that sits next to the bathroom that they walk by, right? Like they see all the time. So make yourself visible. And if you're doing something that you really care about or that you're really good at, do more of that, because I'm always trying to expand my skill set, but I'm also, and maybe this is just me, especially younger, I wanted to be good at everything. But now that I'm really clear on what, I was like, here, let me do investment banking just so that I can understand how that works. And then let me go into product management. I was all over the place. Or let me try this technology because I want to really understand, mobility. And I was interested. I was very interested in so many things. But where I really started finding my stride is when I got focused on the things that I was naturally interested in and better at. And it's okay that I have an engineer with me in my meetings, and I'm okay with that. And guess what? He shines, I shine, or she shines and I shine. So to kind of boil that down, it's just focus on what you really enjoy and then raise your hand and reach out to people and ask for mentorship or guidance. And the mentorship thing is tough because everyone's really busy. So it's more about making sure that when you are asking for that mentorship, that there's some sort of two-way, it's a relationship really. So it's not just one-sided. So what can you offer? What can you bring to that relationship too? And I think that will make that mentoring relationship, even stronger too.
Well, everybody, I hope that you have found this as insightful as I have. And besides that, it's always great to catch up with you, Mercy. I miss you. Don't get to see each other enough these days with nobody traveling. Thank you all for listening, and we look forward to having you on another edition of this podcast series.